And
where were you at this point?
in Brazil, on the beach, and she's selling all your shit, man, for like nothing, your couches and your coffee tables and blah, blah, blah. So I called her. She said, yeah, I'm sick of this. Either you come home, quit your job, make me pregnant, or I'm leaving. I said, I own the company. How am I going to come home, quit the goddamn thing, and,
Exactly.
pay for all your BMWs and your Range Rovers? And
Did she want to come to Brazil or no?
No. She wanted me to quit my job and stay home and make her pregnant.
She didn't meet you halfway?
No, so she went to Paris, and, I wound up settling with her, that marriage.
Yeah.
I'm still friendly with her, but, I mean, she decided, she didn't really want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fine. And then I was in Sao Paulo, and I wound up living with this Brazilian woman and her daughter.
Okay.
And, that was interesting. And she was, I was living right in a really beautiful section of Sao Paulo, which is kind of an oxymoron, but it was like called Jardim District, and it was very fancy, lots of high-end restaurants, big condos. I had a condo up in a kind of high-rise.
Yeah.
And,
now tell me about living in Brazil. Now, obviously you go live somewhere, you got to get an ID and, do all the shit. Is that what you were doing down there? You had identification, you had...
No, I had a visa. I had a 6-month visa.
All right.
And I had permission to be there, and I worked with a lot of big companies and doctors and lawyers, and so I had a lot of people who would help me.
Yeah.
To a point, to be there without...
Any issues.
Well, yeah, without any of those issues.
Yeah.
And that was okay for a while, and it was fun, and, spent every weekend on the beach in between Rio and Sao Paulo.
There you go.
Most beautiful freaking rainforest, beaches, fucking... My boss would be like, how's it going down there? Great.
Yeah, you're sitting here in 20-degree weather.
He's like, hey, he's up in Toronto. It's snow. I'm laying on the beach. He's like, look, don't call me or waste our phone calls unless you have something to report in, okay? I said, no problem. So I'd be down there for weeks at a time, laying on the beach, drinking, caipirinhas and hanging out with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And that all was going okay, and Brazilian is a difficult place to do business. It's very corrupt. It's, got a lot of issues. But, again, it's a third world in some ways and a first world in others. It's kind of very European in some ways. And very multicultural. So it was going all hot, straight, normal until 9/11. I was sitting in a meeting down in Valparaiso, which is in Chile, on the coast of Chile, in a boardroom. And the secretary came in and said, hey, there's been this accident she was watching CNN.
Yeah.
Come out into the whatever room to look at the TV, and it was the plane smashing into the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And that was like, holy shit, what's going on? And they were freaking out down there. They thought there was going to be a world war.
Yeah.
And that the world was, we're going into war. And so that really precipitated a bunch of reactions almost immediately. The company in the United States decided we don't want to be in Brazil anymore.
Okay.
So I had been there a couple days prior in a meeting. I went back down there, and literally the day I got down there, calls me and said, the person I was working for calls me and says, we're not running international anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have a job. There's no more vice president of international. I said, what are you talking about? I'm down here in Brazil.
You've been pushed out again.
He goes, well, two things. One, we can't pay you any of the money we owe you for all your expenses and shit until we get some money in the door and blah, blah, blah. And two is you have the exclusive rights to our product across all of South America. Oh, thanks a lot. Basically, you go down there and...
Yeah.
So I was stuck down in Brazil, literally, no money, living with this woman in an apartment.
Yeah.
And then realizing the world was, coming to an end. And I needed to come back to this, at that point, to Canada. But I had no money. I mean, they couldn't pay me. They owed me a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
And I was stuck down there with no way to get out of there. I called my brother, who said, hey, can you send me enough money for a plane ticket? No.
What a dick.
You got yourself down there, you get yourself back.
He could have made it up to you. At least a little bit.
He's got nothing to make up. He's an asshole.
Okay.
Anyway, he refused to, and I managed to figure out how to get home. And, I took as much shit as I could. I had a whole apartment there. So I had an apartment full of all new furniture and all kinds of appliances.
Yeah.
So I couldn't take that home. So I took what I could and left that woman in the apartment. Said I'd be back soon, but I didn't know if I was ever coming back, and I thought I probably wasn't because I had no job. I had no money. The company was out of, leaving me out in the cold. And then I went back to Toronto, went to work for this company because the guy called me, said, that guy who told you you're fired, we fired him. And now we need somebody to run sales, so could you be the vice president of sales, and we can pay you like half of what we were paying you
when
we get money. So I was like, okay. And so I literally got an apartment sublet around the corner. Had no fucking money. He was working for this asshole. And he couldn't really pay me, but I immediately started looking for a job.
Yeah.
So I called all these people I knew in the States looking for a job, and I found a job in Detroit with a software company in the United States running the Northeast region out of New York City. So I'd be in New York, and they're down in... So they hired me, and I went in. My boss said, I'm leaving. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. You stay here. You can't pay me. You owe me all this money. What am I supposed to live on, right?
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to work down in the United States, and I got a job, and I'm leaving tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I went to work for this company living in Brooklyn, in Park Slope, and running, selling, it was healthcare software for processing health insurance claims and shit.
Yeah.
Not a great company, but I was in New York, they were down there, and again, it was one of these phone relationships. You call in once a week, say, hey, yeah, it's going great. Everything's terrific. Bye. And so it gave me some time in New York to do my thing and to kind of revisit the music that I kind of had done previously.
Yeah.
So I was working for this company. Basically, I had all day, every day. They were paying me good money for sitting around, trying to sell their shit, which nobody was buying. And wound up connecting with this guy from Greece who lives in New York, who was a well-known guitar player from Greece. Mm-hmm. And awesome guitar player, and spoke Greek as main language and English as second language. And wound up connecting with him in a band and gigging with him around New York City for a couple years. In some good clubs. We played BB King's every other week.
Okay.
For a couple of years. We did recorded a bunch of stuff.
Cool.
Played with a bunch of...
You got any albums out there?
Yeah, he's got a couple CDs out.
Okay.
And, he was the main dude, and he was very, like a lot of, guitar players, very egotistical, very self-centered, very all about me.
Yeah.
But I backed him up, and we had fun. We played in a lot of good clubs, did a lot of good gigs there, played a bunch of festivals and stuff. And so it was fun to kind of reconnect with the music in a professional way. And had a couple bars. We were the regular band in New York and Manhattan. So we had a good time doing that. But, it was all... New York's a tough place to be in the music business.
Yeah, for sure.
There's less and less spots to play live music.
Yeah. So this is mid-2000s here.
This is back now. We're talking 2005.
Yeah.
Something like that. Mid-2000s. Probably a little before that when I got there. But this guy, him and I, built this band and then wound up playing around doing a bunch of that stuff and recording a bunch of his music. And that was okay. I was living in Park Slope, and I wound up meeting my current wife, Sandy, who was living on the Upper West Side in an big apartment, that she had bought and was right around the corner from Cinderella's and from Fairway. So it was like a great neighborhood.
So she saw you playing in the band?
No, we didn't meet that way.
Okay.
I mean, she had wound up connecting with me in the band and stuff, but she met me through an online dating, basically. I met her on Match.com.
Match.com.
This is back in the day.
2006?
Around there. But I met her, and she was in kind of a similar place in terms of her career. She was living in Europe for 11 years or something in Belgium.
Yeah.
And had come back to New York and was kind of at the end of her kind of career at a company she was working at and was sick of working for them and doing what they were, again, a software banking company.
Yeah.
And we wound up connecting, and she wound up living with me pretty much in Brooklyn. And the apartment in Manhattan was this fancy, like, Architectural Digest, like, very slim lines, very modern. There's nothing laying out. Everything's away. There's not anything. It's like...
You can't see the trash
clean. There's nothing. Like, nobody lives here. It's like in a museum. But she came to live with me in Brooklyn in Park Slope in a floor-through, which was a cool apartment. And, we had fun. I was playing music, and that was cool. And then we decided that... she was kind of getting done with that company. We had a bet who was going to come out of the thing first, who would get fired first.
Yeah.
And this company wound up keeping me on forever. They made me a deal that, hey, can you stay on for a few more months and we'll keep paying you? It's, really? And then we'll give you unemployment for 6 months? Really?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, why not?
So I wound up going with her, and we decided we're going to move to California and wound up moving to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And buying a house in San Francisco.
Okay.
And living in the what's the name of that? Living in San Francisco
Mission?
proper, in the city.
Yeah.
In a really cool house, in a really cool neighborhood. The West Portal, it was called.
Okay.
Right on the end of the, where the subway comes out of the ground, above ground.
All right.
And wound up living in San Francisco, and she started a business to do executive recruiting with some people. And start her own business with them, which she still does to this day and does well at it, and she's very good at it. She's very organized. And then I started deciding, what I was really going to do. And I went back and tried to dust off my gardening, and I always had an interest in gardening and growing, but more importantly, cooking and eating well and cooking well, and food was always a big part of my life. And cooking food. I've always been the person cooking the food. And so, I went to California and decided we spent a bunch of time around gardening.
Yeah.
Growing all kinds of stuff. I redid a bunch of gardens in San Francisco, but then started, studying with a bunch of people how to grow plants.
Yeah.
And all kinds of plants. And again, there was a very supportive group of people growing weed. So there was a lot of resources there to and I had the legal right to do it. I was allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So I had a, opportunity to kind of study growing stuff, and I don't differentiate between plants. I mean, plants are plants.
Yeah.
I mean, all plants are worthy, and they're all equal, and some are worth more when they're done, but I mean, in terms of growing stuff and how you grow stuff. So I spent a lot of time around that and got some good working knowledge, and, got kind of to the point where I was growing some reasonably good weed.
Yeah.
Not great, but reasonably good. And there you could buy clones pretty easily, and I was doing some of that. And I was growing a ton of plants, all kinds of flowers, all kinds of herbs. But, basically just dicking around with trying to figure out that, and then the food, connecting with all the food in San Francisco, which between the farmers markets and all of the opportunities and types of food and the amount of food, it's kind of driven around that.
Did you have any favorite restaurants in San Francisco at that time? That you can think of?
That I can think of. What's the name of the one that's right on Market Street? It's famous. It's chicken. It will come to me.
Yeah.
Like the slanted door and all the stuff down at the ferry building.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another one. It's still there. What the hell's the name of it? It's famous. It's on Market Street. The woman's been cooking this forever. It will come to me. But there were a few places, and even in the West Portal, there were good restaurants. There was a bunch of ethnic restaurants up there.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of food. But in terms of buying the food, cooking the food, having access to the food, there was all that opportunity in California.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And the amount of food we ate there, just the amount and I had the time. My wife was building her business. I was, growing stuff. I renovated the house. I redid the whole inside of it.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time doing that. But I spent a lot of time around the growing stuff, how to grow stuff, and then more importantly, cooking. I've always been cooking. I mean, I've always had an interest in cooking, in food. And what really brought me to growing stuff was cooking.
Yeah.
I was more interested to grow the stuff, to cook it, to eat it, as what drove me to really want to farm and to grow stuff. And then to really, I've always been connected to healthy food. So I studied a lot of macrobiotics when I was in college and stuff, and a lot of vegetarian stuff. And, I had a lot of basis in that kind of cooking. And then I've been cooking forever. I mean, I've been cooking every meal for every marriage, I cook all the meals. I do all the meal planning, all the ordering, all the cooking and all the stuff. I don't do the cleaning at this point, but, I do all that stuff. And, really the connection between growing it and being able to eat it and know where it came from and what it is. And, that's still to this day a big driver of what I do.
Yeah.
It's really for our own benefit, too, especially now. But, anyway, San Francisco gave me a lot of opportunity to spend a lot of time around those topics and really get kind of my dog, who died not that long ago, Abby, was young then, and her and I used to spend, pretty much every weekday.
Yeah.
Take the bus and the subway. She was allowed on the mass transit after 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go to every dispensary we could find and tour every, dispensary, go to every place, pet store where they had pet treats. But, really got to roam around San Francisco a lot. And long story short, San Francisco, we were at a point where we needed to figure out to make more money to stay there because it was expensive as hell.
Yeah.
Between the taxes and all the rest of the shit. So Sandy had an opportunity to go back to work in the corporate world, and she didn't want to do that. And they didn't wind up offering that job.
Yeah.
And so we decided we needed to get out of there. And we put our house on the market, and in a couple of weeks had offers over the listing price. and sold the house pretty quickly and came back to live here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
My sister's here, and my sister and I were estranged